I guess a little bit of backstory. Some backstory is necessary for this show. Andor is a prequel to a prequel, which is also a sequel. So Andor, Cassian Andor, played by Diego Luna, was a character in the first non-Skywalker saga movie from the Disney Lucasfilm merger, Rogue One. And in that movie, we see him as a very single-minded for the rebellion spy who I genuinely really, really like this character.
Yes.
Because I think that this is the character who shows, really for the first and kind of the only time on the big screen, some moral grayness. And I know we kind of talked about this. It's been a long time since we did our Star Wars rankings, but we talked about this during that episode. He's willing to kill, backstab, whatever to do his job for the rebellion. And we're supposed to see the rebellion as these are the good guys and the Empire, the bad guys. And that's all there is to it, is there's good and bad, black and white, whatever. And this character really exemplifies that war can be a dirty thing. And sometimes the ends have to justify the means, and you have to be willing to get the job done. And I really like that. And I've gone on record and said, that I think Rogue One is probably like the third best Star Wars movie. I think it's a little bit better than Jedi. Not as good as A New Hope or Empire, obviously. But Rogue One was a prequel to the original trilogy, but also in some respects a sequel to the prequel trilogy, which makes this show a prequel series to the prequel movie that is also a sequel movie. So there's all that. But we got a smorgasbord here.
We did indeed.
So episodes 1 through 3, it was like watching a mini movie. Well, it was like watching a movie.
It was, yeah.
And in the first episode, he's trying to find his sister, and he's probably somewhere he shouldn't be, and some police or investigative people are giving him some shit in this bar, and then they kind of follow him out and shake him down, and he accidentally kills one of them and then very intentionally kills the other. And the subsequent episodes have dealt with him trying to basically cover that up, escape from the trouble that's surrounding that, as the general inspectors, or whatever these crooked, or whatever these they're not the Empire, but they're these cops. I don't really have a great other way of putting it. They're like
right,
whatever this planet or systems police forces are kind of like closing in around him, and he has to kind of maneuver around to figure out a way to get out of this situation. And through that, we meet some different characters. We meet Bix, who seems like a little bit of a love interest, played by Adria Arjona. We meet a gentleman of the black market trading sort of situation, who also sort of introduces the concept of the rebellion to Cassian. Luthen Rawl, who's played by Stellan Skarsgård, hence all the Skarsgård references.
So much Skarsgård.
Yeah, there's some other bit characters here and there. There's actually a droid, and it must be named after it's probably named after our podcast, but there's a droid we haven't met yet, named BXG. I'm just looking at the IMDb page, and there's literally a droid named BXG, so that's cool.
I love it. That's awesome.
Copyright
Should get him on
infringement.
the pod.
Yeah, copyright infringement.
Let's sue the hell out of him. Oh my god, let's sue Disney, Brenton.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Mon Mothma is in this. She hasn't popped up yet. So, and we get a look into his past and how he was kind of like a kid on the run. It looks very Lord of the Flies. That's what it kind of reminded me of. Those situations in the flashbacks where eventually he gets adopted by Aunt Petunia from Harry Potter.
Yes.
So that's kind of the gist of the first 3 episodes. What were your sort of thoughts as a through line from episode?
Yeah, I feel like you do have to look at these as like the first 3 episodes and not break them down, because they did this intentionally. They definitely did this intentionally. It's like we're releasing 3 in a row. The number one thing I will say is that I'm a big Wings fan, Paul McCartney and Wings, and Diego Luna
not the TV series.
I also am a big fan of the TV series, but Hayden Church is from that. But
right.
Thomas
Hayden Church.
So Thomas Hayden Church. There we go. Thomas Hayden Church. And I will say that Diego Luna looks like Paul McCartney from that era, and he's on the run.
Yeah.
And he's on the run. So I was like, God damn, you just buy the rights to Band on the Run, because I love Band on the Run, one of my favorite albums of all time. I've mentioned that before on the pod. Yeah. It would be so perfect because he looks like him, and like the way the 3rd episode ends, it's just like, just give it to me. Just give me Wings, which is fine. But okay. So to dive back into what it actually is. So we've talked a lot about different fantasy things, sci-fi fantasy, whatever. And I'm always like a fan of things on the ground.
Yeah.
I love Captain America when it's on the ground, Winter Soldier, things like this. This is Star Wars on the ground. Yeah, they use spaceships to kind of go everywhere, but you're not in space a lot. It's not a lot of being in this, in space looking around. This is what I love about this, is it's on the ground, it's gritty, it's dirty. No one can be trusted. And it's almost, and going back to one of our favorite shows, it's like watching The Challenge. It's gritty, it's dirty, you can't trust anyone. You have a favorite, but boy, you're like, is he my favorite? And it's just because it's so gritty, and I love it. Like, is this show super fast paced? Not really. The 3rd episode is really fast paced. I feel like the 3rd episode is kind of, like we said, it's kind of watching a movie. And so the first 2 episodes are building up to the 3rd episode, and there's a lot more action in the 3rd episode, but I didn't mind the build up because it felt like it mattered. And when we talk about other things we've watched on this show, whether it's I keep calling it Game of Thrones,
House of Dragons,
and then and then Rings of Power.
Mm-hmm.
Rings of Power, we feel like we're not getting anything. Like we're at that point where like it doesn't seem like it matters. And
that's like, we do talk about that later in this episode with we did pre-record that. But that will be in this episode.
Yeah. So but I just in that essence of like, do things matter? It's like, yes, we kind of know what happens because we have Rogue One, but we don't really know what happens. We don't know the ins and outs of everything. And he's an interesting character because, like you said, Brenton, is like he lives in that gray line.
Mm-hmm.
And how many characters in Star Wars history actually live on the gray line?
You could make the case that like Lando and Han do a little bit, but by the time Jedi rolls around, I mean, Lando's kind of there. Yeah, he's kind of there in Empire.
Yeah,
but he's really the only one. I mean, the Solo movie does a pretty good job of depicting both of them, Han and Lando, as being kind of hustlers. You know what I mean? Like
hustlers.
They're doing it in a more it looks more glamorous.
Right.
Than this.
It seems fancier. This seems so low level in like the best possible way, where like the stakes matter, but just to them, and not in like a grandiose way. And I actually think that's important because everything in Star Wars, up until we got Mandalorian and it was just so grandiose. And I'm not saying like obviously the original 3 movies, the second, third, this is the prequel, third. All that stuff. So everything always seems so grandiose and so big, and yet this isn't big at all. Like all these things actually aren't that big, but they're big in this community, and yet they matter going forward. And I think this is really, really important. The only thing I really am concerned about is like these episodes are really good, and we have 9 more episodes. I have this fear that it may be too many episodes. And even if they're shorter episodes, which you and I are like fans of when it comes to this thing, keeping it sweet and short. Well, we're fans
of it when we have to watch so much in a week.
Well, we do, but like even if I didn't have to watch it for this show, I don't need an hour long Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I just don't need it in my life. This show there's no fat. I honestly will say like there's absolutely no fat. And I think this show has a good standing around. I just hope, I've heard that some of the episodes get a little longer the further you go.
Sure.
So my hope is that they keep that and that things matter as much as they seem to matter now in this low level, which is fine. It's like watching like Friends or Seinfeld, where it's like, yes, it only matters to these group of people, but we care.
Yeah. And I will say that this is so far, and they've said, the director and the writers and the creators have said that there's very little fan service. There's not going to be senseless cameos from legacy characters. There's going to be characters that you've seen before, but it's going to make sense within the context of the story. With that being said, I think that this is doing something that The Mandalorian did in season 1 that I kind of lost sight of in season 2, which is showing us the universe, the Star Wars universe outside of just the Skywalker saga. And I don't think that can be understated just how important that is, because for a quote unquote galaxy far, far away, there's really small universe syndrome, where it's how do these stories revolve around the same core 15 to 20 people from point A to point Z through these 9 movies, plus, Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. And, we liked Obi-Wan, Book of Boba Fett, not as much, but same thing. You have these legacy characters like Luke Skywalker in Book of Boba Fett was like a distraction for the main show.
Right. Yeah.
And I really liked that. I mean, we both said we really enjoyed the scene where he just cuts through everybody like a hot knife through butter at the end of Mando season 2, but I feel like that should have been it. And if they were gonna set this thing up where, okay, Grogu has to make the choice of whether to go or whether to stay, they should have done it right then and there.
Right.
Not fold him into the Book of Boba Fett, and now we just like don't know. But I think that it's really important with this show, the same way it was with Rogue One, is that we're telling this story, and this story stands alone without any help from legacy characters, cameos. Okay, we're going to get, 10 minutes of Chewbacca here for whatever reason. And it's just important. I just find this character so fascinating. So fascinating. Yeah. And the fact that we're getting to kind of see how he goes from this guy who's just kind of like scraping by, you know what I mean, to eventually where we see him in Rogue One, where he is this, I don't want to say super spy, but he's a boots on the ground, regular dude. He doesn't use the Force. He doesn't have a lightsaber. He's just a guy. You know what I mean? And he has just like and I think this is what the actor Diego Luna kind of brings to the role, is he just has like a dirtiness about him. And I don't mean that in any kind of bad way. He just looks the part.
Well, there's that whole thing where he comes home And he's like, I'm sorry. And it's like, he doesn't even look that bad, but it's just like his mom just thinks, or his aunt thinks he's,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, his aunt. It's just like, looks at him weird. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I got to wash up. It's like, there's actually nothing wrong with him. It's just that inherent dirtiness about him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
will
great.
say,
Yeah.
the other thing is I did a little bit of reading about this, and there's a big difference between this and some of the other shows. They use something called the volume in a lot of these Disney Plus shows. And what that is it's a digital set. It's a digital set which projects detailed backgrounds and lighting against a video wall. So it's not a green screen per se, but it's something that it projects those images and lights as the background. But they actually built real sets for this. And I think, let me pull this up. This is via IGN. This show had, I want to say, 3 city blocks worth of set. The crew built a set the size of several city blocks, all to create that lived in grimy quality. And I think that goes a long way for this show, because the environment does look lived in. It does look dirty. It looks backwater. A lot of these things that you associate with where some of these characters come from versus, some of these kind of CG type backgrounds.
Oh, it's really good. I would say it's like they did not spend the most money ever, and this show looks way better than another show.
Well, I think it is. We've said this going into movies, right? Where we've said that there's something about certain craftsmanship things that you can see it and feel it, and it makes it better. To me, I love Toy Story, right? But there's nothing better than a hand-drawn animation. Like, it just has that feel of superior craftsmanship. We love Marvel movies, not so much many of the new ones, but like the Infinity Saga, right? We love those Endgame and Infinity War and Black Panther and Civil War and all these things. And even though we didn't necessarily, I didn't necessarily like Tenet so much, there's something special about the practical effects,
right?
Where you're making this happen.
Well, I will add this, is that the legendary Dolly Parton has said this. It takes a lot of money to look this cheap. And, I love Dolly Parton, everything about her. Legend of everything. But that's the truest statement based on music or anything. It's like her aesthetic is based on that, but it's like you get that. And it's like I almost feel this show, which spends like a middle level of money, looks so good. And it looks, I couldn't get over it. I always and I'll end on this because I know, we want to move on, but like, it looks cool. Like, in a way that is dirty, and it looks exactly where everyone should be. And it doesn't look like it should be anywhere else. It's not spacey. There's not a lot of spacey things. And I think this is what makes this show, I think, believable. I know it sounds weird because we're watching a Star Wars thing, but it looks believable. Like, this show could happen on Earth right now with a lot of the things that's going on, and it still seems realistic. And I think that's part of the thing, like, that makes it so watchable. I'm excited to see what happens. I know that other people, I know there's a lot of I've read commentary about no one's actually seen all 12 episodes. I did see that Alan Sepinwall from the New York Times completely shitting on this show. I don't think anyone's received all 12 episodes. So
I just what was the commentary? I don't understand.
He just said it just seemed like a long movie that made no sense. And it's but I don't, from what I understand, is that no one has received all 12 episodes. So he's just projecting. I think reviewers at most, which is where we're striving to be, had received the first 4. So based on everything I've read a lot too, Ren, is that everyone loves this.
Yeah, it's has
it's
the
doing
second
very
best.
well.
It has the second best Rotten Tomatoes score for a debut since season 1 of Mandalorian. It's blowing everything
And
else.
it doesn't
out of
have
the
like
water.
Grogu. It doesn't have a cute little guy. There's no cute little guy in this. So
Yeah. Well, and I think that
Data Luna's kind of cute little guy. I'll give him that. He's a cute little guy.
Okay. Yeah. I just
turning you off.
I forget. Yeah. I forgot. I just had it up, and you just annihilated my brain.
I'm sorry. It's what I do.
It's okay.
Annihilate takes. Anti Skip Bayless. It just annihilate.
91. Takes. It's a 91 on Metacritic right now, or I'm sorry, on RT with 81 audience, but 312 critical at a 91, and that is not anything really to sneeze at.
No, that's good.
Conversely, She-Hulk's in an 87 critical.
Okay.
38 audience.